Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we are joined by Anthony Candeias, CISO at Weight Watchers. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where Cyberlynx comes in. We partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best prices. So whether it's managed SIEM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll help you find the right solution at the right price. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Anthony, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Weight Watchers and your role there as CISO?
Yeah, sure. I think Weight Watchers is definitely a household name. Company that's been around 60 plus years at this point. Started off in an apartment in Queens and grown to supporting millions and millions of members. So my role as CISO is really securing our members' data. We take a member-first approach in thinking about our security and making sure we're helping our members secure their information, healthcare information, PII, all that good stuff, and provide a stable platform for them.
That's fantastic. So it's interesting. I was just looking at there's a new podcast, To Catch a Thief. I don't know if you've seen this. No. I just found out about it this morning. They take it's actually really cool. They're talking about China. They start out with their, when back in, what was it, like 2008, when China went and hacked Google. And so you're like, oh yeah, that's right. That did happen. And then, this was the first time that we had this advanced persistent threat, right? It was the first time that it became known for countries to go after each other, one thing, but now coming after, private enterprise was a whole nother thing. And it made me wonder, as we go into this conversation with Weight Watchers, household name, it's, and you do have lots of member data, lots of information on them. So is that something that you guys see? Is it, I would imagine the threat is kind of real when you've got that amount of data for that many people, housing it and safeguarding it is a real chore.
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about like our approach, that's really the mindset that we have is if we can stop an APT, we can stop pretty much anybody. With my background and, the experience I've gone through, it's really how I got into cyber was responding to an APT event. So many moons ago in a different company, managing infrastructure, virtualization for a global business, and, FBI, DHS came knocking. And said, hey, you're experiencing a breach and you've been compromised by an advanced persistent threat. And that led us on a 1-year-long investigation trying to figure out what this threat actor was doing inside this company. And I use that every single day at Weight Watchers and all of my other jobs since, really trying to take that perspective of how these APTs operate and really focusing in on how to build a security operations center that's strictly focused on being able to prevent, defend, and be resilient against these APTs. They use some of the most sophisticated techniques that, I would say most traditional antiviruses at the time, dating myself when this incident happened, just couldn't pick up, right? It was a huge blind spot. They were doing a lot of techniques like living off the land. And it's like, well, if it's not, malware writing to a disk, we can't pick it up, right? But these, techniques were so sophisticated, so advanced, the A and APT, that it really made me open up my mindset of like what we need to detect. It's really not just like, oh, we need to look for known bad files or known bad viruses. It's really known bad behavior, which is much harder to detect than just simple viruses being written to a disk like we experienced in maybe the 90s and early 2000s.
Okay, that's awesome. I think we've got the whole topic of this show is going to be this. This is phenomenal. So obviously, if you can't disclose the name of the company, that's totally fine. Can you kind of walk us through, what that was like, your role then back then, and kind of what you learned? Because now we're going back to what year is this, when with this AP, your first APT?
Oh man, probably 2010, somewhere
2010,
in
cool.
that time frame. So, long time ago. It was a surreal moment, right? Like, the government coming into our offices and sliding over a disk and saying, "Here's all of your AD usernames and passwords that we've been able to get somehow," right? Don't know how those were captured or put into evidence, whatever the case may be. And like I said, we went on a full 1 year long investigation, observing the tactics, techniques, and procedures of this APT. So it was actually really interesting for me at that point in time because security was kind of something I was interested in, but not really deep into. I was really heavily involved in the infrastructure. I thought I was going to be a network engineer. I did my CCNA, I did my CCNP, and I'm like, all right, this is the Cisco, Kool-Aid is fully drank, and this is my career path.
Yeah.
And then working on that investigation for a year has just completely changed my mindset in terms of what I wanted to do. And the one thing that was really great about like observing an APT side by side, some of the best incident responders I ever worked with, was that I not only saw like what we needed to do from the defense side, but I saw all the offensive techniques. That was like the bigger takeaway for me. It was like they didn't even like install a backdoor. They're just like running PowerShell commands. And it's like mind blowing, right? Like light goes off in your head of like how simple and how easy some of these things that they were doing to exfiltrate data, to move laterally, and it didn't require, a whole Metasploit framework being deployed inside this endpoint. So that was one of like the most eye-opening things, and what really led me down to go think about like how offensive security fits into the picture. And again, perspective-wise, stepping back and what I do today, purple teaming is really like the thing I like doing the most because it marries blue team, red team together. So it's like, all right, let's go as a group, let's go perform some offensive techniques, right? Let's go poke at some APIs. Let's go, stuff some credentials. Let's go mimic some of these tactics and techniques that we expect threat actors to do. All right, now let's go look at it on the other end, across the wire and the logs, and say, okay, let's at least go detect ourselves, right? If we can duplicate this activity, be able to monitor it and detect it ourselves, hopefully prevent it. And now we're in a much better state, right? Because now it gives my team the perspective of what the threat actor is actually doing, and it helps them become better investigators.
That's awesome. I mean, it's kind of like, now you've become this kind of battle hardened veteran, right? I mean, you go from being on the outside to thrown into war, right? If you will, in the cyber sense. And now you get a real taste of combat, and now you're hooked.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most another mind-blowing thing, just thinking back on all of the pieces of this investigation was they were just logging in, right? Like they didn't even have like they had some backdoors that we found and we got rid of, and some C2 malware and the startup folder and the registry, like all that technical stuff we grabbed. But at the end of the day, they compromised the network so well that they were just logging in as another employee. They were showing up to work just 9 to 5, clocking in, logging in, exfilling data, and doing their job, right? One of the other things that we saw that was, again, something that was really impactful in my mindset was that they started hacking some of our security equipment. So just like most businesses back then, we had an SSL VPN, right? A little web portal, username, password, log in. Well, the threat actor said maybe we should just install, maybe a little JavaScript on that page to do a key logging and capture all the username and passwords from this SSL VPN. And to our credit, I always call this out, is we were on a fully patched version of that equipment, and the threat actor was still able to do that. And it's like that becomes indefensible, right? Like at that point, when these, threat actors are so good, they're still exploiting fully patched security equipment. It's like, what do you do, right? It just becomes almost overwhelming.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's eye-opening, right? I mean, scary on the one hand, I mean, right, because it's one thing for you to be a nation state fighting another, but now as a a private enterprise, how are you supposed to combat that? And so, interestingly enough, now going from where you were then to where you are now, as technology has advanced, I mean, now we've got much better tools at our disposal than, mind you, so do they, right? So how do you feel now in comparison to back then?
Well, one of the things that keep me up at night, and I talked about this on a panel this week, is a lot of folks have been talking about the risk of generative AI. And I'll be honest, my hot take is that generative AI is not that scary from a security perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same problem that we saw in the cloud. You're just sharing data. It looks a little bit different. So that's my hot take on generative AI. But I think the more concerning thing from my perspective is AI operators, agentic AI, where these threat actors can use AI operators and know every single CVE in the entire history of the internet, know every programming language in the entire history of the internet, work tirelessly, right, over time, right? They never get tired of these AI operators. So when I think about what keeps me up at night, it's that, right? Being able to weaponize agentic AI to continuously probe an enterprise, a website, a business. That's tough because now you don't even get that human error on the threat actor side of like, hey, maybe I got some time to patch. Maybe I got some time to react. No, the AI is going to say, hey, I just got the RSS feed of this new CVE. Wait, I already have this inventory of this, victim on my list. Now I'm just going to go launch and exploit that potential vulnerability, gain access, and now I know all the different ways of exploiting data. So that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. That's nightmare fuel. That's the stuff that we should be trying to figure out. How do we focus in on and protect against that?
Yeah, no, that's nightmare fuel. I love that. Great term. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's you think that that's going to be the future, that the APT is going to start using that in kind of in place of the kind of skilled human.
Yeah, I think so because we've seen APT operators, right? A number of threat intelligence companies have done great jobs of, attribution of where these guys are across the globe, what country they're a part of, what APT group, the cozy bears, the fancy bears, right? So those operators are just going to shift. They're going to say, well, just like everybody across the globe right now, how do we do more with less? That's exactly how, right? You can have one APT operator orchestrating dozens of AI operators. They have their little list of victims that, push their political motives. Whoever, got on the wrong side of the wrong person ends up on that list. And now all of a sudden they're getting attacked constantly or getting probed constantly, waiting for that opportunity, right? I think that's going to be the thing. It's going to be this constant reconnaissance. And then the AI operator is just going to say, I'm waiting for my opportunity. I'm not going to create too much noise to make sure I don't set off the alarms, right? That's not in the best interest. That's not how APTs operate, right? They're stealth. They're not doing the Nmap scans. They're not throwing Nessus at your IPs. That's not what they're doing, right? Low, slow probes. Okay, I have my intelligence. Now I'm just waiting for that, software version, that CMS framework, that website, vulnerability to pop up and boom. And the same thing on phishing, right? They're going to be able to start tracking all the new employees that are getting onboarded into into your company through LinkedIn. And oh, new employee, maybe I should go send them a new hiring phishing campaign and start trying to take advantage of that, right? And all that's going to be done at scale. And that's going to be really problematic for us as defenders.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And initially, I would think, oh, well, you know what? It's going to be a little cost prohibitive, right? Because the cost of running something like that is going to be expensive. But no, I mean, think about it. You've got billions of dollars that flow into cybercrime. And oh yeah, also it's government funded, for so there's going to be no lack of money to fund the AI agents that are just going to go and constantly be on the lookout. And like you said, they don't have to sleep. So 24/7, it can be a slow burn, checking slowly, doesn't set off anything.
Yep.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we already know that there's a dark market for CVEs by nation states, right? Like documents have been leaked on statements of work for 0 days on iOS, Android, Mac OS, Windows. These people pay millions of dollars for these 0 days, right? Now augment some of that spend. I mean, they're probably building up probably small data centers, right? I mean, in the reality of it, either compromising cloud infrastructure, which we've seen abused, but I can run DeepSeek locally on my Mac right in front of me, right? Like it doesn't take much compute for some of this stuff. So yeah, orchestrating it is definitely going to be a little bit resource intensive, but again, we're looking at the most well-funded threat actors in the world.
Yeah, that's hard to defend against. So, what do you recommend for people, given your experience, as the battle-hardened veteran, what do you recommend people do now? Yeah, so to kind of defend against this, and obviously not against the nightmare fuel because that's yeah, that's tough. But for the regular day to day and the fear that you might be a target of an APT.
Well, I think it goes back of fighting AI with AI. Gartner's coined this new term of CTEM, the continuous threat and exposure management, segment. I think that's a super interesting space. Number of companies doing really innovative things to actually mimic some of these AI operators that I'm describing. And I think that's an area of focus that companies should be spending way more time evaluating and seeing what product fits into their, tech stack. And I really hope that this catches the attention of regulators and compliance requirements, right? When we think about like some of the compliance requirements that we have today, WW is a PCI compliance shop, HIPAA compliance shop, SOX, SOC 2, list goes on and on. None of them call out you need to have a CTEM type of solution, but it does tell me I need to do a, you know, ASV scan every quarter on my PCI assets. And it's like, sure, yeah, it's a check the box that's going to do it. But like when we think about like continuous threat and exposure management, that's something that's going to be mimicking these threat actors techniques and try to, again, beat the threat actors, define these vulnerabilities so that you can solve it, you can fix it, you can defend against it, and not become the next victim.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. Scary, but great. Well, let's go back a little bit. I love kind of talking about everybody's kind of origin story, if you will, and seeing how no two people have really gotten to where they are and gotten to the top, using the same path. Can you tell us, kind of how you got into tech, what inspired you, and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, it started off really young. I had this one pivotal moment, probably like 14 years old, where I sold all my video games. I went on eBay and I put all of my video games that you could imagine at that time, sold them all just to go on Newegg and buy computer parts. And I did it to do two things, really was my goal. Build out a gaming computer and also build out a computer that I can run virtual servers on. So once I got my computer stood up, I was running my own AD infrastructure, my own forest, my own domains within it, learning how to operate VMware ESXi when that was a good product before Broadcom killed it. Really diving deep into this infrastructure aspect, buying cheap used Cisco switches, Pix firewalls, things like that on eBay and setting up my own little home lab. That was just fun to me, right? Like that wasn't even like a career path in mind for me. And then I was talking to a friend and we were just, kind of talking about tech and he's like, yeah, I plan on doing this as a career. And I'm like, oh, that's not a bad idea. So I ended up by transferring high schools, went to Lehman High School in the Bronx that had an amazing computer science program. I took a number of certifications my junior year of high school, A plus, CompTIA, computer repair, knocked that out at 16 years old. I took all the Cisco Netacad classes. We were getting certified in building out fiber optic cables, building out copper cables, so crimping your Cat 5s to your Cat 6s. the TA65B configurations, all of that good stuff. And that's what really led me on a really strong career path. Senior year of high school, started working for Goldman Sachs, working in their data center, working across all their offices, working in the Metro Tech Stock Exchange data center as well. The big thing for that project was the P2V aspect. So we would start getting rid of these physical servers and virtualizing them. That was the big lift. And the cool thing to do at that time was to consolidate hardware, become more efficient, get more resources out of the compute, the storage, the RAM, et cetera. And then, I kind of pivoted a bit. I felt like corporate America maybe wasn't the right place for me at that time in my life. And I went and worked at the Ford Foundation, global nonprofit, operated in 14 different countries, one of the largest endowments of a foundation, had a great career there. Simultaneously went to Fordham University for my undergrad at night. So I'd work 9 to 5, go to class 6 to 9, Monday through Thursday, was a grind, got through it. And towards the end of my time at the foundation, it was kind of this pivotal moment where the stars really aligned, getting deeper on the security aspect. And then Fordham announced, hey, we're going to have a master's in cybersecurity. So I'm literally working on security now. My university that, I'm really loyal to is building out this entire master's in cybersecurity program. So I went through that program, part of the first inaugural class of graduating. And then they kept me around for a bit somehow. I was a teaching assistant throughout grad school. I became a professor, taught my first undergrad class. And 10 years later, I'm still doing it. So it's been really rewarding teaching and really bring up the next generation. And some of my students are off doing great things. And that's really awesome to see and super rewarding. And then I left the foundation, wanted something a little bit different, but still kind of rejected corporate America transparently. So I went to Columbia University. I went there for about 5 years as the director of security operations, sort of modernizing their technology stack. One of the things I like to mention and brag about at Columbia is that they have ASN 14, which means they're the 14th institution to ever be on the internet. They have 350,000 plus external IP addresses. So insane attack surface, which you can just imagine, like you come on campus, you get a public IP when you hop on the Wi-Fi. So the attacks and all the different, threat vectors that we saw in that footprint of the network was incredible experience. Built that kind of the first SIM, first EDR deployment. When I think about Columbia, the way I describe it is really a conglomerate. Because I work for the central IT department, but there's a CTO of the business school. There's a CTO and CISO of the medical center. The law school has their own CIO. Engineering school, exponential, right? For every school, they have their own different technology needs, different technology stacks, different budget, right? Let's be honest about that. Maybe certain schools have less funds than some other schools, like law and business, well-funded, high-ticket degrees. And my goal was to set out was really build security as a service for the university. So I brought in like a site-wide antivirus that every department can get their own deployment of AV, be able to configure those policies, manage their own agents, and not be commingled into this sort of box that we were trying to put them in. And that got us a lot of adoption, and that was great. And it gave us still the kind of MSSP perspective where we can see these 55 different business units all using the product and understand where these outbreaks would occur. So that was super useful. We took the same approach to the cloud through a SIM deployment and monitoring all the threats across all 3 major clouds, hundreds of accounts in each, super vast footprint, very minimal resources being a university. So really did a lot with very little, and something I'm really proud of working there. Did my second master's there, did a master's in technology management. And then I moved on after 5 years to Weight Watchers. So Weight Watchers, I started off as a director of security operations, kind of doing the same thing, struggling with sort of their on-prem security tools. They had a data center. That was all going away. They're going all cloud native. We're 100% cloud native today. So really needed to build out the security footprint around sort of moving away from legacy, what we expect in the data center. Now we need to start thinking about what do we expect in the cloud, led that effort. And now CISO. So leading all AppSec, GRC, security operations. And yeah, it's been a wild ride of a career.
But that's fantastic. Super cool. So, I can't help but wonder, going back to those early days when you're 14 selling all of your video games, was there what was the inspiration to start setting up, VMs in your own, Active Directory? What inspired that? Do you know?
I think it was one of the things I remember is like I really wanted to learn Mac OS because we would have it at school in like middle school, and then at home we just had PC, right? And kind of
Yep.
the basic terminology back then. And I really wanted to build like a Hackintosh. That was my goal. I wanted to
Nice.
emulate Mac OS virtually and try to understand it and learn it. And that led me down a path of like, okay, maybe I should go learn Ubuntu too. And then I'm like, okay. And then I'm learning about like enterprise stuff of like Active Directory and how group policies work and kind of diving deep into some of this infrastructure because when you started setting up some of the network equipment on the Cisco side, which I was heavily involved in, it was like, oh, you need LDAP servers. You need all of these other dependencies, radius servers to get these things up and running. So I'm like, all right, how do I set up a radius server? Well, all right, install Windows Server, install this service, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I kept diving deeper down this rabbit hole.
Nice. That's super cool. So, um, have you had any other experiences with, APTs, or was it just that one formative?
A couple of small ones throughout my career, but I think that was the big one. Like I said, that's ingrained so much in me that as soon as I come into a shop, I'm like, I know what we need to go do and what we need to go look for, and just be very transparent. It's not always buying a tool, right? Primarily visibility and building out some like key detection rules that have come my way over the years, and I would say nothing to that magnitude. Some small opportunity that I've seen some, threat actors take advantage of that we've been able to quickly clean up, but nothing ever to that scale again.
Love it. So, do you see, currently, are you guys using any sort of AI in your sim? Is that something, where do you fall on that? Because you've kind of built out your own, as you said, rule sets that you've accumulated throughout the years, and you seem, like again, the battle hardened vet who knows what the enemy looks like and what they're doing. You're tied right in. Do you do you want to see AI on the sim side? Do you not? Where do you fall on this?
Yeah, where we are in our sim journey right now is I would love to see some AI capabilities within it. We're kind of using it after the sim. So one thing to just kind of step back and think of the makeup of my team. Really, really blessed with the team, capabilities that I have. Majority of my team are full stack engineers. They just happen to work on security, and that is a blessing entirely because when we just think of like different problems and come across them, we can solve them very quickly. So like one of the first things that we did as soon as like OpenAI was released is like, well, how can we start triaging all of our data points in our tickets to be much more efficient, right? And that was a very simple win. We've had some SOAR orchestration in the past. Maybe some user security alert. Let's go grab, previous logs of the last 12 hours and bring them into the case note, right? Instead of copying and pasting dashboards, et cetera, just bring it right into the one place that they're going to do all this triage. So we already were thinking about, okay, how do we summarize this? How do we triage this? How do we have the AI already know our incident response playbook and give us some guidance? Not making decisions, right? That's the one thing I would try to make very clear. AI is not deciding anything, but it can truly help us weed through data and identify patterns and identify outliers so much more quickly than a human can, right? And that's where we try to take advantage of it. We've been able to apply that same kind of methodology across a lot of the different security areas. One of our team members have really built out a really strong way of detecting fake accounts. We're kind of an e-commerce subscription type business, so fake signups just occur constantly, right, for various different reasons. And we've been able to pinpoint that with a high level of accuracy by allowing AI again to determine a confidence score, right? Bring in a number of data points. Maybe it's from our CRM, maybe it's from different APIs or across our environment, the way the user behaves in our app, and we're able to correlate all of those very quickly instead of trying to do that at scale manually. And now we have confidence scores that we can say, hey, we have a high confidence this is known good, and keep allowing them through. But hey, we have a high confidence that this is known bad, and we can go cancel appropriately.
Super cool. So, I'm curious what your thought is when it comes to people looking to get into tech. You seem to like the fact that you've got full stack developers there, working with you. What would be your recommendation to people, now just looking to get into security or IT? What should they be looking at? And I know a lot of people are worried that, oh, AI is going to, I shouldn't go down programming route, because if I'm going to be a developer, AI is probably I'll be competing with AI. So what's your take? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, I tell all my students this, go learn the cloud, right? AWS, management, operations, infrastructure, even learning about how to be the AI infrastructure and security person, really strong skill set that's needed day in and day out. Um, Anything I would say, I kind of guide them mostly towards AWS just because of their market share, and I think their ease of resources and all those concepts apply to the GCP, the Azures, and all the other smaller clouds that are trying to emerge. But cloud security, I think, is the most fundamental thing that anybody entering into the job market can learn today. And along the way, to your point, they will have to learn a little bit of programming. You're going to have to go jump in and learn Terraform, AWS CLI. You're going to have to go learn how to write some Python code and deploy a Lambda function. You're going to have to learn how to build out a Docker container and deploy into EKS. So, like, there's a ton of things that are really beneficial, and you'll learn all of those skill sets out of necessity of securing the cloud. Because I think there's, just some folks that have skill sets that are just like, hey, I'm not a product engineer, right? And that's okay. Not everyone's going to be one, and you shouldn't be forced into that box. But when we come from like the security angle, 100%, you need to lean into everything that modern enterprises are using today and learn about what's upcoming next. So to your point of like, are we worried about, AI operators being able to start developing code? 100%. But at the same time, in my opinion, today, and this may change in the future, there cannot be replaced, right? Like I've used Cursor tremendously. It's a fantastic product. It can generate really strong code. It works effectively. But at the end of the day, there's going to be nuances and there's going to be things that need to get translated from business requirements and user experience requirements and compliance requirements that it still falls short, right? So again, going back to what we were talking about with threat actors and the AI operators, that should be the same thought process for developers and engineers, right? Whether you're doing security engineering or development, how do you do more with less and have AI basically become your intern, right? That's the way I try to like frame it for folks is like ChatGPT is having unlimited interns that don't get tired and don't call out sick, right? And you should take advantage of that. You just got your own personal assistant to help you scale like your work in your day to day. It can help you learn new topics, right? Maybe you're not familiar with Rust, right? You know Python, but now have the prompt tell you what are all the differences between Rust, Python, and Go, and now you're learning all of these new languages and these code bases. So that's where I feel like the unlock is, rather than staff replacement today. It's really going to be how do we get our employees to do maybe 5x of what they were traditionally doing, and that also has a lot of security implications, however.
Yeah. No, we had a CIO of a Web3 company on, and they basically 7x their developers. So 7 to 10, and it was actually really impressive what they were able to accomplish with a small team. They were a much larger team, but then they had some cutbacks, but thankfully they used AI, and now they're far outperforming what they had with 70 developers. With just seven, they were just crushing it. So to your point, having that those AI interns that never sleep, it's supercharging. So
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think what's going to happen is you're going to find, a lot of students come to me with this kind of same sentiment kind of question. And what I think it's actually going to happen eventually when the tech gets even more advanced is that we'll become, as workers, way more strategic than tactical. And I think that's actually a good thing, right? Because I can't tell you how many hours I've spent just like fumbling around with like the syntax of like C or C++ for, my computer science projects back in the day, right? Did that really benefit me in terms of how I understood integers, Boolean, et cetera, and how, computer science works? Maybe, maybe not. That's debatable, right? But now if we remove that syntax frustration and we look at how do we make people way more strategic and maybe more focused on business outcomes and business goals rather than, oh, did I put a comma or a semicolon in the right place? You should have better outcomes as a business and better outcomes in the economy, in theory.
No, 100%. I mean, it does produce Buddha-like patience. You go from instant frustration to learning how to spend hours, banging your head on the same problem to try to find the syntax error, or whatever it may have been. So, but I'm not sure if you really need that level of patience. To your
Yeah.
point, I would just, do you?
That friction should be gone, right? Like that shouldn't be something that, a developer needs to spend hours on when they could be working on adding new features, A/B testing, right? Something that's going to produce an ROI instead of just the frustration.
100% agree. Well, Anthony, this has been an absolute blast. We can't thank you enough for coming on. But before we head out, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and if they're living under a rock, more about Weight Watchers?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Anthony Candeias. Feel free to add me. Always looking to expand my network.
Awesome. Well, until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.